following is a presentation of HBO Sports. And now, from the HBO Real Sports Studio in New York, your host, Bryant Gumbel.
Good evening, and welcome to Real Sports, where we begin tonight with a fairly disturbing look at what happens to racing greyhounds when they're not fast enough to turn a profit on the track. Now, in a perfect world, these retired greyhounds would be allowed to run free in open fields when their racing days were done. But that scenario is far too idyllic. In the real world, there are too many dogs who can't cut it on the track, and too few places for them to go. And that's an equation with deadly consequences. Our Bernard Goldberg has the story in this Real Sports, Sports Illustrated report.
Here comes the Rusty. They're off.
They're sleek, fast, and once they hit the track, single-minded. Greyhounds racing after Rusty the mechanical rabbit at speeds up to 45 miles an hour. No, greyhound racing is not as big or glamorous as horse racing, and years ago it was a lot more popular with the betting public. But dogs are still running at 46 tracks in 15 states, and gamblers are still putting their money down on the races.
2-3, exact the ball.
And you got it.
And even though the industry has seen better days, at the top tracks, a dog can still win almost $200,000 in just one big race, which makes it a tidy little business for the wizards behind the curtain, the ones who find just the right male to mate with just the right female to produce a champion.
I spend hours and hours to decide upon a stud dog for the female that I think will enhance her ability.
Mary Butler runs Gray Meadow Greyhound Farm in Abilene, Kansas, which makes her matchmaker-in-chief around here. This is Revere, who she hopes will be her next great champion.
Is that every trainer's dream, that we're going to raise the next Dan Marino or Joe Montana or
Sure.
Michael Jordan? Or
We want them all to be stars, but there's always that one little step up, that superstar, Dan Marino.
Revere is one of 150 puppies that were born at Gray Meadow this year, one of about 33,000 greyhounds bred around the country each year. The dogs start training when they're about a year old. And once the stars are identified, the owner can either sell the dog,
Sold the dog, $50,000.
or they can race them themselves. The fastest dogs are money-making machines, but the slower ones grade off, as they put it, sent to lower and lower tracks until they can't compete anymore. So what happens to a greyhound when he reaches the end of the line, when he's not winning races anymore and not making money for his owner? The good ones, the ones with champion bloodlines, go back to the farm for breeding, to make more champions. Others are put up for adoption to live out their days with families across the country. But for the rest, the washed-up athletes with no place to go, the news isn't nearly so good. They're the ones who are put down, to use the delicate terminology, killed in plain English.
There are thousands and thousands and thousands of greyhounds killed every year. And it's unacceptable.
Susan Netboy runs the Greyhound Protection League, an organization that says too many dogs are needlessly killed.
why are, at least in your view, so many dogs killed?
Well, the excess of dogs is intrinsic to the racing industry. You've got an 8-dog race, one primary winner. There have to be losers. There's no competition unless there's losers.
If the dogs aren't making money, if they're not winning races, I don't want to be cold about it, but they're of no use to the people who own and train the dogs.
Unfortunately, yes.
The lingo, the talk in the kennels. If a dog's not running, if a dog is not making the grade, take it out back and kill it.
This man agreed to talk to Real Sports, but only if we didn't identify him. He says he's concerned about his safety. For 10 years, he says, he worked with greyhounds as a breeder and a trainer.
Is it just a business?
It's just business. They don't even consider them animals. They consider them gaming machines. They are breeding enormous amounts of greyhounds every year to get the one dog that they feel that's going to go out there and win $100,000, $75,000, $125,000. They're looking for that champion.
Killing racing dogs humanely, euthanizing them, is perfectly legal in most states as long as it's done by a licensed vet. But not everybody plays by the rules.
I'd hold a dog's collar loose in my hand, lay the rifle barrel across my wrist against the back of the dog's head, pull the trigger, bang, let go of one end of the collar, nudge him with my knee, he falls in the hole. He's dead.
His name is Robert Rhodes, and in 2002, investigators found the remains of 3,000 greyhounds buried on his farm in Alabama. Rhodes shot the dogs for $10 apiece, which was less than a vet would charge to euthanize the animal, which is why Rhodes' business was so good. The greyhound industry says what happened here is an aberration which it does not condone, but advocates like Susan Netboy say it happens more than anyone wants to admit, that dogs that can't race anymore are shot, clubbed, even electrocuted, and because it happens on private property, on small out-of-the-way farms, the dogs simply disappear with no official record of what happened to them.
How does the off-the-radar screen stuff work?
Kill trucks going out the back door of the track.
Kill trucks?
Kill trucks.
What is a kill truck?
It's a truck full of dogs jammed in that are going off to a remote location to be killed.
On a tip, Real Sports went to a veterinary clinic 10 miles from a track in Alabama. At 7 in the morning, trailers began pulling in, and the dogs were taken off the trucks. Look at the dog on the left, the white greyhound with a brown spot on his back. The dogs are walked behind this fence, and less than 3 minutes later, the white greyhound with the brown spot is thrown into a dumpster. What we don't know is exactly how the dogs are put down behind the fence. We do know that over the course of 30 minutes, 16 dogs were disposed of, and it's all legal.
These are creatures that have feelings, they feel pain, and they cannot just be slaughtered en masse because they're an inconvenience or a financial liability.
Is there any motivation for a breeder to kill a dog and not put him up for adoption, not even try?
I don't know of any.
Gary Guccione is the president of the National Greyhound Association. He acknowledges that while some dogs are indeed put down, the industry is trying to save as many greyhounds as it can.
We're getting about 85 to 90% of the greyhounds that are coming off the track now that are either going into adoption or going back to the farm for a breeding career.
Why are certain dogs adopted out and certain dogs killed?
Well, a lot depends on who has that dog. Most of the people are very much committed to pet adoption. Some don't feel they have the means to try to find adoption groups or hold those dogs that long.
What happens then?
Well, those would be the ones that would fall through the net.
How many dogs fall through that net? Depends on who you talk to.
On a yearly basis, how many dogs do you figure are killed?
Our calculations are currently around 17,500.
A year?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. There's no way. No way. Right now, that number is somewhere between 35 and 4,500.
About the only thing the two sides do agree on is that the more dogs that are adopted, the fewer that would be killed. But people like Bridget Cooper, who runs a greyhound adoption service in Florida, say they're fighting a nearly impossible battle.
The moment I set up an adoption hauler and get 30 dogs out, a week later, the racetrack, the owners call again and say, we need more dogs out.
Bridget Cooper says it's a waste of time to argue over how many dogs are killed each year, when the real problem is how many are born each year. The owners are breeding way too many dogs, she says, hoping to get that one superstar. The problem is, that leaves thousands and thousands of dogs that just can't make the grade.
I'm sure they would like to get everybody adopted out, but at the same given time, they're not going to regulate the industry so we can adopt more out because the overbreeding is still going on. So long we don't start at the core, so long we don't have better regulations about breeding, so long nothing will change.
And that's the central point as far as you're concerned.
There is such a vast number of greyhounds. There are not enough people in that country to adopt greyhounds.
So the whole problem could be solved with the snap of your fingers if they just didn't breed as many greyhounds.
That's right.
I don't think that's particularly fair. I think back in the early 90s, we asked our membership to cut back on breeding and to focus on quality rather than quantity. Our hope is that by the year 2007, all of the adoptable greyhounds coming off the track that are not going into breeding programs are adopted.
100%.
100%.
But most of the 300 adoption groups nationwide are small-time operations. It's mostly dog lovers with 9-to-5 jobs doing the adoption work in their spare time.
You want to meet your mommy?
In Bridget Cooper's case, she's a full-time nurse who also works with 2 local tracks to put dogs up for adoption when they're finished racing.
This is your forever home, remember?
But because she needs the tracks to give her dogs that can't race anymore, she's been hesitant to speak out against the industry.
There is a lot of good in the industry, and there are a lot of good, decent people who will do anything for the greyhounds. But there's a lot of bad going on. These dogs cannot speak out for themselves. So maybe it's time that I do.
Remember Revere, the puppy from the Gray Meadow Farm in Kansas? He's one of the lucky dogs because whether he becomes a champion or not, Revere, like all the dogs here, are kept until they can be adopted out. That's the policy of the farm. But for thousands of other dogs that are bred for racing each year, the future isn't so secure.
No matter how you cut it, this is a business. And if the dog isn't generating revenue, dog isn't winning races,
We're done with you. You don't produce, we are done.
This sounds like any other athlete. If you don't produce for us on the field, you're out.
But he lives, and he can find a different job. A greyhound cannot.
Bernie, Mr. Guccione, speaking of his critics, told you they have an agenda of trying to shut down the industry. Is that true?
For some of them, it absolutely is. Some of them don't want any greyhound racing because they say it's cruel to the animals. They're kept in cages all day when they don't run. So for some critics, not all, for some it's true.
At what age do the owners of these greyhounds typically give a thumbs up or thumbs down in their future?
Well, when the dogs are about 18 months, that's when they start running. It takes a little while to see if they win any races, and the thumbs up, thumbs down is based on one thing and only one thing. Do they win races or not? So a little after that.
What kind of pets do they make if they don't make it on the track?
If you can catch them, they make very good pets. These dogs have been running all their lives. They like to just hang around. They're like couch potatoes. And there are thousands and thousands of them right now, tonight, that need to be adopted. If anybody's interested, they can go on the internet and find an adoption center near where they live.
Yeah, but that applies to a lot of other dogs, non-greyhounds also. I mean, on a regular basis, aren't we euthanizing dogs by the hundreds of thousands year in and year out?
Yeah, millions. Dogs and cats, about 3 to 4 million a year. The difference here is that the greyhounds are bred, and the question is, the two sides of greyhound, nothing, you understand. The question is, are they overbred? Is that why we have too many who need to be put down?
Gotcha. All right, Bernie, thanks. Let's move on.